And so unit 4 reviewed today. So, and I'm going to have to sign back in for some reason. Okay, it's different. There we go. So as we move through this, there's about 27, yeah, there's 27 questions on this one. Just think about what we covered over those 5 lessons. It was pretty quick, so hopefully those earlier lessons will still be fairly fresh in your mind. But think about, some of the knowledge side of things. So we started with ideas like micro and macroeconomics, right? The idea of small economics, the stuff that affects individuals, the consumer and business, and macroeconomics, so larger like entire countries. And their activities. So things like gross domestic product, right? The goods and services, the value of all the goods and services produced in the country for a year. We talked about that. We talked about trade quite a bit, trade balances, deficit spending, right? And surpluses. The Great Depression came up several times. The Great Recession in the 2000s came up quite a bit. How that affected, think about those ideas about how that affected people's credit, how it affected spending, then those go into the skills that we learned as well, right? So like multiple causes and effects, thinking about, what caused a recession, and the multiple things there, like the bank lending and home loans and stuff, and the new types of visualization of data. So we looked at multi-bar graphs, multi-line graphs yesterday, and pictographs and things like that. So we'll put that all together as we go through the unit here, and let's take a look. We'll get started. We'll see how things go. Quite a few questions. Okay, and some reading, of course. Let's see. Nilda, would you mind reading our first passage there? Nope, maybe. How about Etta? Could you read our first passage?
Okay. It says, an economic depression which lasts a number of years is characterized by economic factors such as substantial increases in unemployment, a drop in available credit, diminishing output, bankruptcies, government debt defaults, reduced commerce and trade, and sustained volatility volatility in currency values. The output of an economy is based on the gross domestic product. The table below shows the progression of the GDP from its high level in 1929 to its low point in 1933 and the recovery that followed. Although the recovery from the Great Depression of the 1930s appears to happen fairly quickly, the U.S. was not meeting its capabilities in domestic products. Depression usually began through a combination of decreases in demand and overproduction. These factors led to decreased populations, workforce reductions, and diminished wages for employees. As the changes weaken consumers' purchasing power, a depression can worsen and become more widespread. Recovery from a depression typically requires either the existing overstock of goods to be depleted or the emergence of new markets. At times, government intervention might be necessary to stimulate an economic recovery.
All right, so lots of information there, right? And stuff we've looked at. So we'll look at the table real quick here before we answer question 1. Real U.S. gross domestic product. So remember, right? Always look at the title. 1929, 1939. Always consider the years involved and they're comparing this to the value of the dollar in 2005, right? Considering like inflation and everything. So we have our years in the left-hand column and the real GDP in billions. Remember, we'll always take account of the value that's displayed there. So 1929 was $976 billion. And then we can see where it, hit the lowest point in 1933, just like the passage says, and then begins to pick up through those years, a little dip along the way in 1938, and then pops back up in 1939. Okay, so question one, how about we get Grace to read question one there?
Okay. Question one. Which of the following conclusion can be drawn based on the information in the table? A, the United States had been in a period of recession throughout the 1920s. B, the production of war supplies for World War II led to a depression in the United States. C, the purchasing power of US consumers grew increasingly during the early 1930s. And D, government intervention in the US economy during the 1920s created a depression during the 1930s. Is it B?
So it's it's C, the purchasing power, right? So we're looking at that goes along with a recession or depression, right? There's less purchasing power by the consumer, by the individual. So when we get to those 1930s and those early years, right? Remember, GDP is the value, the market value of all services and goods produced in a nation. So if that is decreasing and not increasing, that's affecting the consumer, that's affecting the individual, and that's likely a recession or a depression. And then B, we hadn't quite gotten into World War II yet. Well, by 38, 39, our wartime production was increasing, even though we were not entering the war yet. And actually wars, a lot of times wartime production will help lift a country out of recession or depression because of that, increased stimulation of the economy. But that leaves C there, right? So it weakens. Thinking about depressions and recessions, right? Always weakening a consumer's spending power. So C for 1 and 2, right? We've got the same passage. Let's go to Tracy. How about Tracy read number 2 for us?
Yes. Which of the following prediction could you have made about the years following 1939? A, unemployment in the United States would gradually decrease. B, the United States would experience a great number of bankruptcies. D, the reason in demand would continue to rise down. D, the recent condition could continue to rise down. A?
Yeah, A, right? So thinking, sort of inferring if you were to continue, right? Because we see a trend. We see a trend in an improving GDP. That's an improving economy, right? It's been getting stronger and stronger in the second half of the 1930s. So by the time we hit the 1940s, right, we can infer that because of that increased GDP coming out of that depression, that we're going to see less unemployment. So it's going to decrease. 2 is A then, right? 3, we have our same passage for 3. How about Christiana? Would you read number 3 for us?
Number 3. Which of the following explains why the table shows the US GDP in year $2005. A, unemployment. B, overproduction. C, inflammation. Okay.
Looking at C.
Inflation.
Okay.
Yeah, D, supply and demand. 2005. Is it D?
It's C. So, if you see something like in like $2005, right? The actual GDP would have been, it would have looked a lot less, but we have to think sort of in today's inflation. We want to recognize that, okay, this is basically what it would have looked like in today's dollars. That's what it's doing there. So it's accounting for inflation. The real GDP in billions in 1929 was not $976 billion. It would have actually been less. But for us to sort of know what that really means because of that inflation, if it's like if it said $300 billion, that doesn't, that wouldn't register with us. So we look at it in a number form that we can better understand. So we calculate the inflation with that. So 3, yeah, we explain it by showing the inflation as well. So C for 3. Sure. And 4, yeah, 4, we have the same passage again. How about back to Nilda? Nilda, could you read 4?
Yes. Which of the following can be substituted for the term volatility in order to provide the most accurate interpretation of the text? A, fullness. B, ambulatory. C, loud. D, instability. D?
Yeah, instability, right? Sort of thinking in terms of context clues we talked about in language arts. You can use that, but volatility basically means instability, right? If you think of something being volatile, it's a negative term. So 4 is D as in dog. 5, well, we're rolling right along. We've got the same table again, same passage. Etta, how about reading number 5?
Okay. Which of the following can be substituted for the term stimulate in order to provide the most accurate interpretation of the text? A, explode. B, motivate or encourage. C, inflate or engorge. Or D, bring to a halt. I think it's C.
So it's B. So to motivate or encourage. Yeah. C's kind of close, right? Because we are trying to expand it, right? We're thinking about growing the economy. But in order to do that, we want to sort of push it, right? And that's the idea of stimulate. Just like when we, if you got a stimulus check over the past, what was it, last year or so, when we were trying to, boost the economy. And a lot of people got stimulus checks. That was the idea, to go out and spend it. Right. It wasn't put it in your bank and save a check. It was literally called a stimulus check, trying to motivate and encourage people to spend. Right. So B is in boy for 5. Okay. And now we've got pictograph. We've talked about pictographs and how to read those. Let's go to Grace. How about you take a look at our graph here, our pictograph, and answer the question for us there, number 6.
All right. So there was.
You there, Grace?
No, please, did you say Grace?
Yeah.
Oh. Which of the following actions, number 6, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Which of the following actions will guarantee a reduction in the rising U.S. national debt as shown in the graph? A, the continuation of many government programs. B, the approval of a federal budget that produces a surplus dedicated to paying money owed to other nations. C, an increase in tax benefit given to large corporations. And D, the passage of new economic stimulus legislation. B,
Right? The opposite of deficit is surplus. So anything you do to create a surplus, right, is going to affect that deficit. So B as in boy for 6, 7, that's our same pictograph, right? Yeah. Tracy, would you mind reading 7 for us?
Yes. Which of the following statements can you determine to be true based on the pictograph? A, the U.S. nation debt had exceeded $600 billion by 1975. B, the U.S. nation debt decreased between the years 1980 and 1985. C, the national debt level has continued to rise since 1975. D, the U.S. national debt expanded more between 1995 and 2000 than it did between 2000 and 2005. About the A, 2005, 1975, the debt had a 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, A.
So
Or
it's C, right? Because it, just generally speaking, it continued to rise from 1975. So A, the U.S. national debt had exceeded 600 billion by 1975. We were at 1, 2, 3, 4, 500 billion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I miscount. I count 6.
Yeah. If I didn't have my glasses on, I'd do the same thing. So yeah, 7 is C. It's basically, it continues to increase there. So yeah, and remember there too, right? We have 2 symbols, right? We have the green dollar sign in the circle for 100 billion, and then we have that block to show a trillion. And then once we get to 1980, you know, we change the symbol because we're into a new value in the chart. Okay, so 7 was C. Let's see, we've got a passage here. Let's see, Christiana, would you mind reading our passage for number 8?
Please. Number 8. Okay. The Telework Enhancement Act of 2010 was signed into a law on December 9th, 2010. The passage and signing of this legislation was a significant milestone in the history of federal telework. So it's a telecommuting. The act is a key factor in the federal government's ability to achieve greater flexibility in managing its workforce through the use of telework. Well established and implement telework programs provide agencies a valuable tool to meet mission objective whilst helping employees enhance work or life effectiveness. Federal agencies, including managers and supervisors, can benefit from telework because it's 1, helps with recreating. No, because the word
Retaining.
okay, helps with No, like the first one, there were RE.
Oh, recruiting.
Okay, recruiting and retaining the best possible workforce. 2, ensures continuity, continuity, is it
Continuity.
continuity of operations and maintaining operation during emergency events. Telework is a key component in ensuring the performance of essential government function during national or local emergencies such as natural disasters or national security incidents or other situations that may disrupt
That's right. Disrupt.
disrupts normal operations. 3, helps to reduce traffic congestion, emission from vehicle, thereby providing the environment, 4, promotes management effectiveness by targeting reduction in management costs related to employee turnover and absenteeism and reduced real estate costs. Transit costs and environmental impact. Sorry. Environmental impacts. And 5, enhances work or life effectiveness and balance. Telework allows employees to better manage their work and family obligation, thereby retaining a more resilience results in oriented federal workforce. From the Telework Gov Guide to Telework in the Federal Government 2011.
Go read our question for us.
Which can be expected based on the description of benefits to managers and supervisors. A large turnover in the workforce. B, higher overhead costs for the government. C, the need for higher level security clearance. D, increased productivity from teleworkers. Is it? Is it D?
D. Yeah, and you can see that would be a benefit for both, right? For your worker, your manager, and your supervisors. So D as in dog, increased productivity from telework. Okay. All right. 8, D as a dog. Let's see. I'll go ahead and read our passage here. So number 9 says factors of production are the items used to complete a production process. These factors typically fall into 3 main categories: land, labor, and capital. At times, a 4th category defined as entrepreneurship or management also appears alongside these. In order for a business to achieve success, it must maintain a healthy balance of these factors of production. The flowchart shows the flow of money as well as goods and services throughout the U.S. economy. In this flowchart, households own all of the factors of production. The people in these households sell their labor, land, and capital to firms. In exchange for these factors of production, the people receive wages, rent, and profits, right? So that's sort of how the economy works. Exchange for that capital we talked about. All right, and then we look at our flow chart. So the flow of money, goods, and services in the U.S. economy. We have households on the right, firms on the left, right? So households spending money goes into the markets, goods and services, and that turns into revenue on the other side for firms. So different types of businesses.
Okay.
On the bottom side, so households, labor, land, and capital, they use that into the markets for factors of production. Production inputs goes to the firm, right? We see all of these circling around there. Wages, rent, and profit, that comes from a firm and goes to a household as income, right? So let's take a look here. Question 9. Let's see, Sasha Gay, how about you read question 9 for us?
Suppose you own a company that manufactures lawnmowers. Which of the following factors of production would fall under the category of labor? A, money contributed to shareholders in your company. B, your ability to manage your employees effectively. C, the work of your employees. And D, the property on which your company is located. Is it B?
So C, right? Labor is that work of your employees. So yeah, that's, that's going to be the, what a household provides for one is going to be that labor force. So C is in cat for 9. And 10, our same flow chart, our same passage. Let's go back
Right.
to Nilda. Could you read number 10 for us?
Okay, did you add it?
Yes, the willingness to start one own business and manufacture. Oh no, wait, sorry. I need to read the top one. Which of the following types of factors of production is your willingness to start your own business and manufacture products? The willingness to start one's own business and manufacture products is an example of A, labor, B, capital, C, profit, D, entrepreneurship. D.
Yep, that's the whole idea,
That's
right?
what I was
Entrepreneurship is the
talking
idea of starting your own business, the willingness to start your own business and manufacture products. That's being an entrepreneur. Okay, D is in dog, or 10. And 11 are same stuff again. Let's go to Etta. Would you read number 11 for us?
Okay, which of the following actions generates income for firms? A, buying goods and services from people in households. B, selling goods and services to people in households. C, buying factors of production from households. Or D, avoiding the markets for goods and services and factors of production. So income would be stuff that you have to sell. So A.
So B, just think about it in sort of your prior knowledge, right? How does a business generate income, right? By either selling goods or services, right? That's where their money comes from. And that is generated by people in a household, right? So we go out, we buy a product. I went to Target today. I got some chips. I got some deodorant. I got some some chocolate, and that generated income to Target, right? Selling those goods and services to me. So 11 is B. Okay. And let's see here. Let's go to Grace. How about 12 for us?
Okay. Based on the information in the flow chart, which of the following statement can be determined to be true? A, money and goods and services move in the same direction throughout this economic system. B, after receiving wages, rent and profit, firms use this item to purchase factors of production. C, all transactions between firms and households contribute to the nation's GDP. And D, firms control all the production inputs in this economic system. C,
Yep. C is in cat, right? We are all part of the GDP, right? All the goods and services and our labor, right? That goes into that idea of the goods and services, the market value of those goods and services produced by a country. So, you know, be proud, I guess, that we're all part of the GDP of the United States. So 12 is C as in cat, right? All transactions, whether it's from a business side or it's on the household side, right? Part of the GDP. 12 is C, and 13, got some new information here. So we talked a lot about credit. Hopefully you guys remember revolving credit and non-revolving credit, right? So credit is a form of borrowing money, as we know. When you use revolving credit, you have a pre-approved limit and maintain a credit balance, right? Remember, I was thinking about revolving. Once you pay that off and you keep, you know, your credit card in good standing, you can continue to use that credit as you pay it off, you know, pay it down, and then you can use it again. When you use non-revolving credit, you borrow a set of money and make equal monthly payments to pay for it. So things like a car loan or your mortgage, right? It has a start and a finish, non-revolving. So the graph showed the billions of dollars Americans borrowed on credit between 2008 and 2012. I think we saw this one before or something very, yeah, I think we did see this exact same graph. So on the left, right, that revolving consumer credit 2008 to 2012. Billions of dollars on the y-axis are years, on the x-axis, non-revolving on the other side, right? We definitely saw this. Billions, and take note, right? I want you to make sure you understand. Look at the difference in the graph. On the left, you have a different value where you start and finish. On the right, notice that non-revolving credit starts at 1,400 and goes up to 2,000. On the left, it starts at 700 and goes up to 1,200. Okay, so you might make sure you pay attention to stuff like that. Yeah, that's right, Nelda. It is a lot. And so let's take a look at our question then. Let's go to Tracy. Did you answer question 13 for us?
How did the recovery period between 2010 and 2012 differ in the areas of revolving and non-revolving credit? A, revolving credit stayed lower and steady than the previous years, and non-revolving credit peaked upward. B, revolving credit dropped drastically, while non-revolving credit dropped slightly. C, revolving credit stayed higher than the previous years, and non-revolving credit speed downward. D, revolving credit spiked drastically, while non-revolving credit dropped drastically. Could I view the picture? Revolving drop, non-revolving up. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. What kind of time frame on this?
D.
So A.
A.
So look there, right? Revolving credit stayed lower and steady, right? So looking at those years 2000 to 2012. Small gain, fairly steady. And then 2010,
About 2 hours.
2012, we see zooming non-revolving credit. And what we know, right? So we're talking about recovery period. So after the Great Recession, we get to the next decade, economic situation improves a little bit. People are a little more confident, so they buy a new car. They maybe get a mortgage, right? So more of those types of loans, that non-revolving side between almost halfway through 2009 up to 2012. Okay, so A, 13 was A, and we see the dip there because of the recession. And then we see it recover and going up. So 13 is A.
Not at the moment. I think it is.
14, how about Christiana? Could you read question 14 for us?
Okay, number 14, why does a lower level of non-revolving credit as shown in 2008 and 2009 indicate an economic recession? A, consumers' resources and confidence are down, so fewer people are buying cars, homes, and businesses. B, consumer resources and confidence are up, so more people are buying cars, home, and businesses. C, fewer people are paying off credit cards balance. D, more people are paying off credit card balance. Is it A or C?
Yes, yeah, A. Consumer resources, right? In an economic, that's not just looking at the graph, right? But actually thinking about what happens in a recession, what happens in a depression. Consumer confidence goes down. I'm scared to go out and buy a new vehicle or make a large purchase because maybe, things aren't great at work. Maybe I'm risk getting laid off. Maybe I did lose my job, so I don't even have that, potential. I don't have that discretionary income at all. So those types of things, right? That's going to impact an economy by people, just like right now, people kind of cutting back. Things are more expensive. The items at the grocery store, prices of gas. Hopefully you don't have to go get a car right now because the prices of even used vehicles are so high. And so our, consumer confidence is a little bit low. So you don't, you're not going out and using non-revolving credit. 2008, 2009, I'm not going to take a chance on buying a house in a bad economy, or another large purchase like an automobile, which are generally the two things you most associate with that non-revolving credit, right? A car loan or a mortgage. So that's definitely consumer confidence is low there. 14 is A. 15, we got some new information. So the Dow Jones Industrial Average is an indicator that measures changes in the performance of different groupings of stocks. Many people use the Dow Jones Industrial Average as an indicator for stock market growth and economic strength. So remember we talked about this. Okay, well, the Dow Jones and the stock market, that's one indicator of the economy. You wouldn't want to base the entire, you don't look at that one metric. You don't look at that one number and say, oh, look, Dow Jones was up today. The economy's doing great. There's lots of other factors, but this is one that you can use. And it's one of those short-term, we're talking about long-term and short-term ideas of economic strengths and indicators. So this would be a short-term one. And the Dow Jones Industrial Average, looking at, the start of a year versus the end of the year. And I remember I mentioned it took a dip. There was one day, like a week or two ago, where the Dow Jones took like 1,000-point dip in the course of the day. And it actually recovered higher than it had started that day. But I'm sure everybody was probably pulling their hair out there in the middle of the day on Wall Street. the Dow Jones Industrial Average, right? We have 1995, we have it in 5-year increments, 95, 2000, 2005, 2010. We have it at the start of the year and then at the close of the year, right? How much that changes. I've mentioned this before, you know, in our type of economy and most of the world's economies, if you're not growing, you're in trouble. That Dow Jones, you know, whether, you know, it should always be higher at the end of the year than it was at the beginning, because otherwise you're in a recession or a depression. And it, you know, it's just, it has to keep growing. It just the way our economic system works, it just has to keep growing and growing. So then we see the percent change, right? 1995, great year, right? It grew from 3,000 or 3,800 to around 5,100, a 33% change. Big year. The 90s were, generally speaking, a good economic situation for the United States. 2000 starts to change, right? Now we have a negative change. It didn't grow, it shrunk. 2005, same thing. It shrunk less, but it still shrunk by a few points, right? About 10 points or so, 12 points. So that was a 0.61% change. 2010, back on track, right? So 11,000 to 12,217, we had about a 5.5% change. So that's one of the economic indicators. And like I said, it's not the only one, but it is one that you're going to follow as like a business analyst. So 15, how about Sasha Gay? Let's go back to you. Could you read question 15 for us?
Based on the information and the table, which of the following is most likely true? A, many investors made money on their investments in 1995. B, most people shield away from investing in 2005. C, there was a healthy return on investment in 2000. And D, investors invested heavily in technology in 2010. Is it B?
So it's A. In, you know, generally speaking, you know, we see that much growth in a year. That means that investors did well that year. So they made money in 1995. 2005, probably not so much, not as much. So maybe 2000, you could say, okay, now people start staying away from you know, investing. Healthy return on investments in 2000, nope, that was not a good year. And then D, investors invested heavily in technology in 2010. We don't know what they were investing in, right? We don't have that information here. We just have the overall indicator of that market growth and strength. So A, that leaves A, we can infer based on that year 1995 and that huge amount of growth, 33% is crazy, that was a good year. So 15 is A. 16. So 2 graphs. Remember, we talked about comparing and contrasting different information, different forms. And now we have a bar graph, right? And we have a line graph. Let's look. So US citrus production, 2003 to 2007 on our bar graph. Production, millions of tons. So lots of oranges and grapefruits being produced. 15 million tons in 2003, topped out at 2004, over 15 million tons, maybe about 16 million. And then we see a big drop, 2005, 2006, 2007. Interesting enough. So fires, US wildfires, 2003 to 2007. So we're wondering here, okay, what are we comparing? What is this supposed to look like? 2003, well, so yeah, about 50,000 wildfires in 2003. that climbed over 60,000 2004, back down to almost about 50,000 in 2005, then it shoots way up in 2006 and back down in 2007. So wonder what that means. Let's take a look at question 16. Sasha Gay, how about you read question 16 for us?
Which of the following could have caused the changes shown in both paragraphs between 2005 and 2017? A greater demand for agricultural products, a decrease in productivity per hour. C, more farmers specializing in citrus. And D, a nationwide drought. D.
D as in dog. Yeah, so think about, okay, we're producing less citrus in those years, 2005, 2006, 2007. Now, there could be multiple reasons. We could have had something like blight, something else could have happened. But interesting enough, that same time frame, 2005 to 2007, we saw a huge increase in wildfires. And so what's one thing, maybe those two different ideas or different events could have in common? A drought, right? When we have drought conditions, that tends to cause more wildfires. Out west, we hear a lot about the dry season. I was in LA, I think 2015 it seems like it's always drought in LA. I mean, it rained once, I think, over the 3 months I was there. But you go on a hike or something, and it's just like everything is so dry, like it just crunches underneath your feet. And you could see, just like one like lightning strike or spark is just going to set this off. And likewise, of course, if you have a drought condition, that's bad for production. You're not going to be able to produce as much in agriculture. So that would lend you to think that, yeah, we may have been in a situation where there's a nationwide drought. So 16 is D as in dog. 17 are same data. How about Nilda? You want to read number 17 for us?
Yes. Assuming the high production yields high profits, which of the following conclusions can be drawn about profits in the citrus industry? What is the other word?
Profits, citrus industry.
It was covered, that's why I couldn't read it.
All right, okay.
Yes, industry during the years with the wildfires, with the most wildfires. A, profits double from previous years. B, profits remain the same as the previous years. C, profits decline from previous years. D, profits increase from previous years. A.
So it's C, right? So profits decline from previous years. So, thinking about, making that assumption with, if you're producing less, we talked about supply and demand. So in that time frame, you probably were also trying to charge more, but they may not compensate that. You may not be able to charge. Everything has to stay within a certain realm. So you can start charging like $10 per orange just because of a drought. So instead, you may wind up, that may start eating into your profits and you may even take a loss. So C there, C is in cat for 17. Okay, and we have 18, our same information. How about Etta? You want to read 18 for us?
Okay, how does the year 2004 compare with regard to citrus production and wildfires? while citrus production peaked in 2004 wildfires. A were the highest in a 5-year span. B were the second highest in a 5-year span. C were the third highest in a 5-year span, or D were the fourth highest in a 5-year span. It looked like it's the third highest.
On the right question. Oh, okay, 18. The third highest in a 5-year span. Yes, C. So 18, C as in cat. 19. All right, sticking with the same graph and bar graph and line graph. Grace, you want to take 19 for us?
All right. Between which periods did the number of wildfires in the United States increase the most? US wildfires increased the most between A, 206 and 207, B, 208, 207 and 205 and 206, C, 204 and 205, and D, 203 and 204. A.
B. So look, right here, 2005 to 2006, we rocketed up there, right? So that year went probably from about 55 or 50 or so thousand to over 80,000, right? So we're 1920. Got some new information here. So GDP by state, we have 3 states: Arkansas, Connecticut, Ohio. We see Ohio has a pretty big GDP, right? Lots of goods and services. The value of the goods and services produced in Ohio, we see that it's much bigger than Connecticut and much, much bigger than Arkansas, which is in blue. And we have that in GDP per millions of dollars. So between 2007 2011, we see steady for all 3 of those states. Ohio almost getting up there to about 500 million. Now we see GDP income per capita by state. So looking at that based on the individual, right? When you see per capita, that's basically per person. They'll often, like murder rates, they use that a lot. We think of like a city like Chicago, where there's a lot of violent crime and stuff. They look at the the amount of murders in a year, or New York, or someplace like that. But if you compare that per capita, where you're actually averaging that by the population, there's actually other areas that might be worse. A place like Flint, Michigan, or Richmond, Virginia, might have more deaths per capita. So what you're looking at here then is GDP income per capita. So yeah, great. Ohio has this huge 500 million GDP, but per capita, what does that mean for each individual? Well, as it turns out, Connecticut per capita, per person, has a higher GDP. So each individual in the state of Connecticut represents a larger amount of the goods and the value of the goods and services for the state. And Ohio comes way down and comes closer to that of Arkansas. So per capita, meaning that about 35,000, if you look at Ohio, and about 30,000 for Arkansas. So, again, our value changes on that, on the y-axis. So from hundreds of millions of dollars on the one on the left to tens of thousands of dollars on the one on the right. So, that's about what we generate per person, is about 35,000, whereas somebody in Connecticut is producing somewhere between 50 to 60,000. Okay, so let's take a look here. Number 20. Let's go with Tracy. You read number 20 for us.
Yes. 20, which of the following statements is true based on the two graph? A, the GDP and per capita income of Arkansas remained at about 50% of those of Ohio for the period shown. B, for each state, the GDP and per capita income increased at similar rates. C, the period from 2011 to 2050 could likely feature a little change in GDP and per capita income for each state. D, GDP and per capita income are not related. C,
C, right? There's very little change, either on the line graph or the bar graph, especially on the bar graph, right? The very little change in those years as far as GDP by state. And then the same goes for the GDP income per capita there. So 20 is C as in cat. And sticking with our bar graph and line graph again, let's go to Christiana. You want to read number 21 for us.
Number 21, which conclusion are you able to reasonably drawn based on the comparison of GDP and income by states as shown in the two graphs? A, imports to Ohio have decreased each year since 2003. B, the population of Arkansas, what was the name?
Arkansas?
The population of the name, the A name.
Arkansas.
Okay, Arkansas is expanding at a higher rate than that at which its wages are increasing. C, the GDP of Arkansas and Connecticut will eventually reach the same level. D, Connecticut has a smaller population than Ohio. Is it D?
Yes, yeah, D as in dog. So, right, when we think about, things per capita, a lot of times if you see higher numbers, that may mean that there is lower population. So, per capita, whatever it is, one individual is more responsible for whatever activity or, economic output, whatever it may be, murders, whatever it is, just like, Franklin County, per capita, as far as like, we have some issues with like homicide in Franklin County, but per capita, how does that compare to a place like, Miami, Florida, whatever it may be, by person, it may be a different story then. All right. So yeah, D as in dog for 21. And 22, same graph, same bar graph. Sasha Gay, how about you read 22?
Unlike the multi-line graph, the multi-bar graph does not take into account which of the following items when measuring the data. A, the population of each state. B, the number of businesses located in each state. C, the variety of industries found in each state. And D, the national standard for its subject. Is it C?
It's A, 22 is A. So the one difference, right? We talk about per capita, that means they're taking into account the population. Yeah, so the line graph, that is based on population, right? Per individual, whereas this is just per state. It's another way to think about it, right? 22 is A. 23, So let's see what we have here. It says the economic incentives are used to encourage people to make certain choices. Most often, economic incentives involve money, but they may also involve goods or services. An economic incentive can be a positive or negative. A positive incentive rewards you for making a certain choice or behaving in a certain way. A negative incentive does the opposite. It punishes you for making a certain choice or behaving in a certain way. I want you to think about this real quick. What was a recent positive incentive in Ohio concerning COVID?
It's something about getting the shot.
Yeah. And what did Mike
They was
DeWine?
paying people. They was paying people to get it or something. Or-
Right. Remember the lottery, right? They gave away $5 million, right? They gave away $1 million to 5 different people, and they had a drawing each week. And you were, if you went and got your shot, and you were entered into that lottery. And they gave away like some scholarship.
Mhm.
Yeah. So there, right? That's a positive incentive. It's like, go get your shot and you have a 1 in, however many millions chances. But that was, trying to, and other states did the same thing. West Virginia.
I think it was called the Vaximillion, I think.
Vaximillion. Yeah, that was it. I couldn't remember the name. Vaximillion. Yeah, but there you go. There's a perfect example, a recent one of a positive incentive, right? So 23, thinking about that. Let's go to Nilda. How about reading 23 for us?
Yes. Which of the following is an example of a positive economic incentive? A, interest charged on your credit card for non-payment of the entire debt. B, fines for returning library books late. A $50 refund for opening a new checking account. D, an extra 10-cent charge per minute on your monthly cell phone statement. C.
Yeah, C, right? So, and right now in the labor force, we're seeing a lot of positive incentives to get people to, like Amazon. I've seen ads where they have like $1,000 sign-on bonus if you go work for Amazon. Nursing. If you get into nursing right now, I mean, it seems like the last decade or more, there's always a shortage of nurses. There's always huge incentives and signing bonuses, like tens of thousands of dollars sometimes to, get your degree and go work. Yeah, Nilda says I need a nursing job. I think I wouldn't mind. Well, there's too much involved with that, too much blood and stuff. But yeah, but I mean, and it is. Teaching right now, the same thing. There's certain bonuses and stuff. Thinking of a negative incentive though, with the Affordable Care Act, right? With Obamacare, that was something that was real contentious in the Affordable Care Act, was getting penalized if you didn't have health insurance, right? And they was eventually, I think the Supreme Court ruled that was unconstitutional, but they were actually trying to, as a negative incentive, make sure that everybody had health care, otherwise you get penalized. Of course, there was benefits, there was positive incentives for you, along the way as far as tax credits and stuff if you did have it. But there's a, sort of an example of a negative one. And so let's see, we only got 4 more questions here. I'll go ahead and read our deal on credit rights and how the law protects you. Credit is valuable, and how you use it goes far beyond shopping. Whether you manage your credit well or poorly can affect where you live and even where you work. Lots of jobs will check your credit score. Because your credit record may be considered by prospective employers, that is why you need to understand how credit is awarded or denied and what you can do if you are treated unfairly. The Fair Credit Reporting Act promotes the accuracy and privacy of information in consumer credit reports. It also controls the use of credit reports and requires consumer reporting agencies to maintain correct and complete files. According to this act, you have a right to review your credit report and to have incorrect information corrected. Issuing credit reports. Okay, so we have another little subsection here. So credit bureaus are required to help you understand your report. Reports can be issued only to those with a legitimate business reason, including creditors, employers, insurers, and government agencies, right? So just some Joe Schmo wants to know your credit score. They can't access that. There has to be a reason. There has to be a good reason. Credit report errors. If you find an error in your report, notify the credit bureau in writing immediately. The bureau is responsible for investigating and changing or removing any incorrect data. The source of the error must then notify all consumer reporting agencies where they sent information. If you are not satisfied with the correction, you have the right to add a brief statement about the issue to your credit report. Denied credit. So if your application is denied due to report error, the lender must provide you with the name and address of the credit bureau that issued the report. Then you have 30 days to request a free copy from the bureau. The bureaus must disclose to you all information in the report, its source, and who has recently received the report. You have the right to have the credit bureau reissue corrected reports to lenders who received reports within the last 6 months, or to employers who received one in the past 2 years. And then disclosure. So consumer reporting agencies must provide you access to the information in your credit report, as well as identify those who have requested the information recently. You are entitled to one free report a year. You may be charged if you request additional reports within a 12-month period. And then limiting access. So you may ask reporting agencies to not distribute your name on lists used by creditors and insurers to make unsolicited offers. Consumers have the right to sue consumer reporting agencies, users, and providers in state and federal court for violations of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So that's your rights you have in regards to your credit. And what you can do, if there's discrepancies or anything else, or who can access it. So we have some drag and drop boxes here. So it says obligations to use and manage credit fall into one of these responsibility categories. Based on the passage, determine whether each drag and drop option is your obligation. So as the consumer, as the credit holder, or the credit bureau, or the obligation of both. So who's responsible for these activities? Okay, and our Venn diagram. So we only, as a consumer, as a credit user, we only have one obligation. So what is our obligation that we're going to?
Complying with the act.
So it's managing our credit.
Oh, managing.
One thing, right? So just simply, we need to take care of our credit. We need to make sure that we're maintaining, our payments and trying to keep that in good standing. Let's look at the credit bureau, right? Process of elimination. That'll get us on to, those things that are both. So credit bureau, what are they responsible for alone?
Error investigation.
Error investigation, certainly. What else?
Working with lenders.
So
Well, that would be both.
yes, compliance with that act, right? Compliance with the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So it's up to the credit bureaus to maintain that. And of course, that leaves just our 3 obligations for both. So our privacy is an obligation by both. Accuracy is an obligation by both. And working with lenders, right? You as a receiver of credit of a loan, you have to work with your lender to make sure that you're making your payments. But your credit bureau also, as far as reporting goes and maintaining, fair reporting and such, will also part of that. So how's everybody doing? Do I need to stop on that for a second? Make sure everybody gets caught up here. Okay. And that only leaves us 3 questions. So I think we're actually going to get to some language arts today, which is good. We don't want to fall too far behind. Okay. How are we doing? Move on yet? Okay. All right. So final 3 here for our review. I'll go ahead and read here. So how consumers, right? Competition counts. How consumers win when businesses compete. Okay. Probably see where this is going. I'm probably going to talk about some monopolies here. So the FTC's Bureau of Competition, protecting free enterprise and American consumers. So what if there were only what if there were only one grocery store in your community? What if you could buy a camera from only one supplier? What if only one dealer in your area sold cars? Without competition, the grocer may have no incentive to lower prices. The camera shop may have no reason to offer a range of choices. The car dealer may have no motivation to offer a variety of car models and services. Competition in America is about price, selection, and service. It benefits consumers by keeping prices low and the quality and choice of goods and services high. Competition makes our economy work. By enforcing antitrust laws, the Federal Trade Commission helps to ensure that our markets are open and free. The FTC promotes healthy competition and challenges anti-competitive business practices to make sure that consumers have access to quality goods and services, and that businesses can compete on the merits of their work. The FTC does not choose winners and losers. You, as the consumer, do that. Rather, our job is to make sure that businesses are competing fairly within a set of rules. A monopoly. A monopoly exists when one company controls a product or service in a market. If it's because it offers consumers a better product at a better price, that's not against the law. But a company that creates or maintains a monopoly by unreasonably excluding other companies or by impairing other companies' ability to compete raises antitrust concerns. For example, a newspaper with a monopoly in a small town could not refuse to run advertisements from businesses that also advertise on a local television station, right? So 25, how about we go to Nilda? Would you, yeah, let's go with Nilda. Could you read question 25 for us?
Yes. Which of the following is necessary for a market to be competitive? A, international exchange. B, government control over prices. C, just one company to sell each other product. D, more than a single seller or buyer. D.
D, yeah, you need frank competition. Same thing, you know, even with, if you're thinking about sports, right? You got to have more than one team to be, you know, for it to be a competition, or more than one player. So D is in dog, right? More than a single seller or buyer to make it competitive. D is in dog. 26, Grace, could you read 26?
Okay. Which of the following best describes a monopolistic market? A, one in which multiple sellers help maintain lower prices. B, one in which consumers only have one seller from which to purchase a product. C, one in which only one type of good is exchanged. And D, one in which consumers are given more power than sellers. B.
B, yeah, one in which consumers only have one seller from which to purchase, right? That's a monopoly. Just like mono, you know, we've talked about prefixes of words and roots of words, mono meaning one. So only one business that's supplying that product or service. and B is in boy, and then 27. Last question for our review. Let's go to Tracy for 27.
Yes. 27. How do consumers decide business winners and losers in a free market economy? A. Consumers choose which products to buy. B. Consumers support monopolies. C. Consumer pay higher price for convenience. D. Consumer shop for the best value.
A, right? That's choosing winners and losers for whatever reason. So if I buy a Subaru over a Ford or a Toyota or a Honda, you know, maybe it's because I like the features or whatever. So, you know, that's what drives competition. If Ford wants my business, they need to make a vehicle that, you know, more suited to what I want at a cost that I can afford, right? That's what drives competition. Same thing with anything else, shoes, right? Televisions, driving the idea of what the features are, the quality of the item, and the price. You know, that's going to, you know, make influence a company to as far as what they produce and how much they charge. All right, so A for 27. Do I need to follow up here with any answers? We good? Okay.